The Eastern Cape government says the damage caused by recent deadly floods is estimated at over 5 billion rand. National government has allocated over 500 million rand to help rebuild infrastructure and provide relief for thousands of people who are now displaced. Eastern Cape Cooperative Governance MEC Zolile Williams joins us this evening to reflect on some of what came out of your media briefing today. MEC, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Can I start the conversation with this, you could call it a statement, but the full scale of the Eastern Cape disaster management crisis was laid bare last month when the people of OR Tambo and the Amatole region were hit completely unaware. What lessons would you say can be drawn from this disaster from a government and disaster management point of view?
Thank you very much, Toli, and good evening to you and to the viewers. Well, Toli, there are big lessons to be learned out of the disaster that has befell us in the past month. Well, that we need more agility in terms of our response mechanisms, wherein on a technical level, you need boats to be nearer to all the disaster centers in all our districts. For now, where you will find boats located is more in East London, where we have an agreement for rental of boats during disasters. Now, this disaster has shown us that you may need boats in all the disaster centers, and we've already communicated with the service providers to try and say, well, you need mechanisms to ensure that boats are available in all the disaster centers of the province. Secondly,
just on that point, Bao, just on that point, I apologize for cutting in. That is such an important point you have made, that boats and I would dare say human beings who are trained in this kind of work to be on hand and nearby in almost every corner of the Eastern Cape. When you say that those kinds or that kind of equipment needs to be nearer, do you agree that this figure of 103 people who have died could have been much less had such resources been nearby?
Definitely, Toli, definitely, because because it was rainy on those 2 days, we tried first to bring a helicopter, if you remember. But the helicopter could not fly, and we then resorted to boats because when people reported to us, there were people hanging on trees. So we thought, okay, a helicopter from East London or Port Elizabeth would be necessary to arrive and help the people. But unfortunately, those service providers could not fly helicopters. Then we resorted to boats. And that's why it took time, because remember, there were road works between Umtata and East London at that time. So that created some delays for the boats to arrive. And I dare say, really, Toli, had we had everything nearer, we would have been more better, able to save lives. And I think it's a big lesson, which is unfortunate, because lives have been lost already.
And I don't want to add salt to injury here, Mr. Williams, but there are very disheartening reports, and even reports by this very station you are speaking to tonight, because out of this disaster, you would have expected a caring government, particularly from the Eastern Cape. You are nearer to the people. You have been there. You saw with your own eyes how deeply affected they were. But reports say that next to none of the officials, people like yourself, attended funerals of the families who lost upwards of 2, 3, 4 family members. Those families were left to fend for themselves. Can you really say you're a caring government?
Well, Toli, we discussed deployment of all leaders in the whole province. Remember, majority of these people were in Mthatha. Others were spread in the province wide. So we deployed all of us to attend, councillors, and not necessarily, MSs alone. We deployed people broadly to begin to attend funerals. And Toli, at some point, we can't be everywhere at the same time. But with the deployment that was presented to us, people attended, leadership attended those funerals, even in other areas outside Mthatha. So there may be one or two where there has been probably no attendance, which is unfortunate. But I think caring would not only be leveled against only attending those funerals, whilst it's necessary, but we've been with those communities as much as we could.
Yeah.
You've seen us on the ground. You've seen us giving support. You've seen the preparations we've made. So unfortunately, we couldn't be in every of those funerals, because at the same time, there were many people buried at the same time, Toli.
Yeah.
So we can be distributed so far, even the leadership itself.
Physical presence is one thing. What about financial resources to help these families bury their loved ones? Was that on hand? Did that happen?
Well, Toli, there's a lot of support that we've provided. For instance, the Department of Education has been providing in all the families funding for each child that has passed on. Funding was provided totaling close to 5,000. Department of Social Development was on hand 4,600 per person who has passed on in each of the families. We've provided services linking with AVBOP to provide burial services to those communities. We've also provided food and food supplies to those communities. And we've tried our best only to try and make this difficult situation at least comfortable, but not to the extent of full, happiness, because the people are distraught because of this tragedy.
Yeah. Let's conclude the conversation on this score, Mr. Williams. Your 2025-2026 budget, this is your Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. My understanding, you'll correct my figures if I'm wrong, 1.165 billion has been allocated to your budget. How much of that have you put aside for disaster management, given where we have just come from?
Actually, as you know, our budgets were cut because of the discussions in the National Assembly in relation to VAT or no VAT. So we've had a budget cut, same as other departments, as Cogta. But remember, Toli, on disaster management services, we've set aside funding to purchase vehicles that are going to add value towards our response mechanisms, technical vehicles that will help us to unlock snow during snow seasons. And we've also ensured that meal packs for the communities are purchased in bulk, because we would want to respond on time as government and not be, overcome by NGOs when it's our responsibility to respond.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of funding that we've put aside to ensure response mechanisms.
Yeah.
We've purchased stoves to respond in each and every disaster center. We're trying to make ourselves better, but the financial situation is quite problematic, as you would understand.
All right. I'm going to end the conversation on this score because these are figures that I'm reading from a party that is in opposition in the Eastern Cape. And you'll tell me if they are wrong. The Democratic Alliance says you, as I've mentioned the figure, you have 1.165 billion that's been allocated to you for this financial year. Out of that, you have put aside 11 million for provincial disaster management. Can you really say that you are planning for the future, given that you are a disaster-prone province?
Look, Oli, that is only the budget for those things that we think we need. And we have made our presentations to provincial treasury, such that we are getting, during the adjustment period, we're getting more funding for all the issues that we wanted in the budget. But because of the strained financial situation, we couldn't be allocated all we wanted. Now, there's a challenge, only in respect of fire vehicles. I know the opposition has interacted with me on fire engines, which are a function of municipalities. But if you look at that particular function, there's underfunding from municipalities province-wide, which makes communities vulnerable in respect of that.
All right.
But also, as I'm saying, we're trying our best to say incrementally, based on the resources we have to ensure that we build this capacity. And I have indicated in the past that we want also technology, and part of the adjustment budget is to focus on technology, which is going to assist us to respond quickly and more agile in any oncoming disaster. And we're persuading Treasury to look into those things. The last part is that we've agreed that all departments in our province must put aside 2% of their budgets so that we can be able to respond to any disaster on our own before any national intervention. So that has started already and is beginning to bear fruits.
Mr. Williams, thank you very much for your time. I apologize for rushing you there. Hopefully we can have more conversations of this nature going into the future.
Imagine waking up to find your home washed away, your school in ruins, and your entire community turned into a disaster zone. That's the grim reality thousands of families in the Eastern Cape are now facing after some of the most devastating floods the province has ever seen. With over 5 billion in damage reported, this is more than just a natural disaster, it's a humanitarian crisis. The recent torrential rains pounded parts of the Eastern Cape for days, triggering flash floods, mudslides, and widespread destruction. Roads collapsed, bridges vanished, and entire villages were cut off from the outside world. Hundreds of schools, clinics, and homes were either severely damaged or completely destroyed. Businesses have ground to a halt, and families are living in temporary shelters, clinging to hope. According to the Eastern Cape government, the cost of repairing the damage is currently estimated at a staggering 5.4 billion. And that number could still rise as assessments continue. These aren't just statistics. Behind each rand figure are stories of loss, trauma, and resilience. From children who can't return to class, to farmers whose crops have been wiped out, the ripple effects of this disaster are being felt across every sector of society. Eastern Cape Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs MEC Zolile Williams has been at the forefront of coordinating the response. He confirmed that the national government has stepped in with an initial relief allocation of over 500 million. This funding will help to restore basic infrastructure, things like water systems, electricity, and roads, and to provide emergency shelter, food, and healthcare to the thousands of people who have been displaced. But MEC Williams made it clear, this is just the beginning. Rebuilding an entire province after such a large-scale disaster will take time, resources, and transparency. And that's where the real test lies. The government has promised that funds will be used efficiently, and that communities will be kept informed every step of the way. There's a renewed call for accountability, especially after years of corruption concerns. South Africans are watching closely. Beyond just fixing what's broken, there's also a growing conversation about climate resilience. These floods weren't just a fluke, they're part of a worrying trend. The Eastern Cape has experienced multiple climate-related disasters in recent years, from droughts to storms. Experts say this latest event is a wake-up call. The province must start investing in infrastructure that can withstand extreme weather, including better drainage systems, flood-proof housing, and emergency response protocols. Communities themselves have also stepped up in powerful ways. Local NGOs, churches, and youth groups have been organizing food drives, collecting clothes, and helping elderly residents relocate to safer areas. The spirit of Ubuntu is alive and well, even in the face of unimaginable hardship. So, where do we go from here? The next few months will be crucial. If the R500 million is used wisely and quickly, it could restore hope and stability. But if it gets tangled in red tape or mismanaged, the suffering will only deepen. That's why continued public oversight, independent monitoring, and honest communication will be key. What's clear is that the people of the Eastern Cape are not giving up. They're rebuilding, they're organizing, and they're demanding a better future, not just for themselves, but for the generations to come. This disaster may have shaken the province to its core, but it's also brought out the best in its people. As the Eastern Cape rises from the rubble, one thing is certain: this is not the end of the story. It's a chapter of resilience, recovery, and hopefully, real reform.